Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear student, this is Dr. Zahur Hussain, and I'm going to talk about Middle English literature and Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Chaucer, is considered one of the important poets of Middle Ages, and he gave certain new ideas and excellent poetry he did, in which he talked about certain individual characters, certain typical characters. Especially, it's a journey from one place to another place, as it has been a tradition over there. So, it's part one has the Anglo Norman period that starts 1066 to and ends by 1350. The Norman conquest of Britain took place on October 14, so after the Battle of Hastings, and 1016 also marks the end of Old English and the beginning of Middle English starts there. So Anglo-Norman basically it's linked with the French people. We can see on Chaucer's poetry at that time French was considered standard language, and people most of the time speak French instead of English, and as it has been standard, and the people of France were definitely advanced and have more exposure as compared to the English community. So, language in Britain, majority of the population spoke Old English, but the clergy and the rulers spoke French. So, English was not a language of elite class. For elite class and for business class, it was basically French that was practiced, that was spoken there. So, these are certain points that we have to keep in mind. So further, we'll see French influence on English language and literature. So heavy consonants of English Saxon was changed to soft French. English begins to become standardized. So lines of communication are open throughout the country, and especially if we can see certain techniques in poetry, especially alliteration and caesura, are replaced with rhyme and meter. Iambic pentameter and rhymed couplet started there. So previously, what was done, and right now there have been a lot of changes in literature too, and techniques which were used in previous time, and with the start of Anglo-Norman period, we can see certain changes there. So French influence on English language and literature, both French culture influenced Anglo-Saxon mindset. Feudalism introduced to England, it came from you can say France, and it was also introduced as it was a start that people start controlling the lower class, and there was elite class, gentry, and this concept started over there. And again, we can see strong influence of the church too, as previously it didn't have that sort of influence over the people. So one of the important thing that the main exponent, representative poet of this age was Geoffrey Chaucer. So exactly we people don't know when was he born. So that's why no, not yet known year of Chaucer's birth, but it is supposed to be year around 1345 to 1350. And Chaucer is considered the first modern poet, the novelist too, because he introduced certain characters, certain novelities in literature too. Though his genre that he's practiced, it was poetry, and he very beautifully portrayed his age, his culture in his lines, especially when we can see in the Canterbury Tales very beautifully and excellently he has mentioned all these things one by one. So basically, he was a public servant. Can his jobs included the following: soldier, controller of customs, justice of the peace, as well as a first official too. So he held certain key posts during his life, and he has been successful in his life too. Worked in different positions and worked for the sake of government, and he enjoyed his life too. As a poet, he had very deep observation of his society, and very beautifully and clearly he portrayed his observation through his verses, and gave us the history, the historical background, that what sort of society existed at that time during Chaucer's age. Interestingly, we'll see here the etymology of the name Chaucer. Chaucer comes from the French word, and which means the maker of shoes or hose. Actually, this is just a name for the sake of name. In reality, we can see none of his relatives or his family members were shoemaker. It's just a name that has its origin, so it's something new, as a sort of information that you people must know, that what does this name mean. So Chaucer's time, especially, that's very important because poet is basically a true historian who beautifully reflects his age through his lines, and Chaucer is not an exception in this case. Chaucer has truly represented beautifully and clearly, explicitly given what was his society at that time. So English society was evolving from medievalism to modernism. So he's called the first modern poet too. The society was coming out from the impacts from the influence of Dark Ages and entering into modernity. The age of skepticism and style. We can see questioning was there. People start doubting, but before it wasn't like this one. People was firm, resolute, and determined in their faith. So for the first time, faith and authority were losing hold on the people. People start questioning different their tenets of faith, and the authority was challenged one by one. So it is a start of modernity, what we can see in modern European countries these days. Though this age had certain hazards too, just like this currently we are facing with the threat of coronavirus. At that time, Black Plague struck 3 times, and a lot of people, uncountable people, died due to that disease. But even then, people, those who survived, they worked. They were very hard workers, and they survived here. And literature was also there that reflected here. So social structure of the society, due to diseases, due to modernity, skepticism, style, and when faith was shaken. So these were certain things that initially social structure became unstable, and it was, you can say, we can say easily that that was an age of transition was there. So further, we can say that Chaucer was full of abuses. If we can say his age, when we will study his poetry, we will see corruption was there. I mean, people were evolving, and corruption in religious circles, what he typically, or we can say in a technical term, ecclesiastical spheres, where people like popes, friars, summoners, they were blackmailing people, they were plundering people in one way or the others. And on the other hand, we can see that there were diseases there at his time. There was 100 Years' War, which ended in 1453, but still that war was there between two giants, between two countries. So for the first time in 1485, Henry IV tried to bring peace and stability in the states, between two states, those who have been fighting, those which were neighboring countries and fighting with each others. So Chaucer's time was tumultuous time. We can see a lot of troubles were there. People were ill, and corruption was there. Social circles and in economical circles, at all places there was some sort of transition was there. And this thing he very beautifully reflected in his verses. We will study his verses as when we will study the parts and the portions of Chaucerian poetry. So why we study Chaucer? Chaucer was the father of English poetry. Definitely, whenever we talk about English poetry, the first name that strikes our mind is Geoffrey Chaucer. He ranks with other great poets such as Milton and Shakespeare. So you can see, like Milton in English poetry and Shakespeare in English drama, though he wrote a lot of his plays in poetic forms too. So Chaucer also did justice with his work, excellent work he produced, and that's why he is called the master of the short tale and of the literary achievement in the Middle Ages. So in Middle Ages, he gave what is short tale, and how did he give beautifully the story, the life history of people. So in the Canterbury Tales, each pilgrim, because there were it was there were 29 peoples have been mentioned there, so stands out distinctly. Each remains for all time as a type. And still, if we can say, even in our country and our state, we can relate to our religious figures too. The same sort of corruption is possible in different spheres, and people with same typicalities and individualities do exist. So every character is true to his type and true to his individuality. And the distinction that he made between typical characters and individual characters is excellent one. We can say that the prioress is one of the beautiful character, and she has certain individual characters, but at the same time she's going to reflect her type of people too. So typicality and individuality we can see there. So this thing makes him a unique writer, unique poet. Each tale represents a plethora of thematic perspectives, so we can see different themes one by one we can find over there one. So some of the choices other themes are the style of the aristocratic hero figures. So upper class has been you can say has been the butt of his criticism, has been targeted there. So comic revelation of the foibles of love we can see, especially wife of Bath is one of important character where he says husbands at church he had five without another company. So very this is what models of marriage relationships, that what sort of extramarital corruption is there. It has been mentioned there, but at the same time we can see the knight and certain other characters where we can find ideals of love and sacrifice. So thank you for watching it, and hopefully we'll come with the next one.